Hey everybody, this is Off the Cuff. Welcome back, and I'm your host, Dr. Michael Lynch. And there's been some important things that have come to my attention, and I cannot believe that we're still doing a little debate about this. I really don't understand. So tonight we're going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about consciousness and our situation with that. So now a lot of you out there are still grappling for, I guess, consciousness. I really don't know what you're grappling for. So it has occurred to me that consciousness is eluding a few people. That's okay. We're all in this together. We're all climbing up the same hill. So let's try to look at this the best we can. So I'm going to put up a slide and we will go through the ins and outs, the rough. I mean, I could go on for hours about consciousness, so which I have in the past on other shows. But here we'll just go through a basic slide and diagram to show you the preliminary findings, if not the findings, on consciousness. Now, we all understand that consciousness is a confined tachyon, is confined in a small tachyon, focused tachyon design, so it looks like a sphere or a ball. The whole concept here is the reason why it looks like a sphere or a ball is because that's the easiest form to take in this dimension. So the sun is round, the earth is round, the moon is round. The reason why everything is round and in a sphere is because that's the simplest form. Because energy emanates in consciousness from a central point and then emanates out. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about quantum immortality. Now, everyone talks about quantum immortality. Well, I can define it. I can put it down to a very good scenario, and that is that once you have a system that is encased upon itself in a consistent waveform of energy, even if it's a wave packet of non-competing waveforms vibrating in a consistent confined space, and none of that changes, and there is no entropy, then that energy will last forever. There is no reason for it to not exist comfortably within this wave packet of energy. So the wave packet of energy is a consistent container, or say consistent form or shape, and if there is no change, therefore it will virtually vibrate and radiate forever, which makes it by definition immortal. So if we don't change the energy, and the energy is confined, and the energy is vibrating and oscillating within its parameters, and there is no entropy, that is immortality. The reason why we call it quantum immortality is just to help with the people who don't understand what quantum science really is. But quantum is basically the vibration of something, the vibration of energy, photons, electrons, water, whatever. It's just a vibrational frequency. So quantitatively, this energy in this sphere will be forever and totally immortal. So that's the idea of quantum immortality, is really energy immortality, such as electricity. If electricity is consistently being made and going throughout the grid, then it is virtually immortal as long as the grid sustains it. And the energy production is consistent. So that's what they call it 220 or 110 or whatever. It's because the idea that is the frequency of the energy, and that's the energy output, and that's what everything is designed to handle. That energy is moving at the speed of light throughout your house and into all your appliances, and that energy consistently is immortality. Plain and simple. So it cannot be destroyed. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just goes to its natural state. Its natural state is more plasma, electrical plasma, than it is anything else. So that's why we call it paraplasma physics, because we're dealing with the physics of plasma, which is the fourth state of matter in a confined volume of a sphere that is radiating and moving on its own consistently. And that is energy immortality, mental states of energy immortality. Now, a lot of people talk about putting a thought out there into space, a manifestation or whatever, and that energy goes out until the manifestation comes into fruition, and then it dies. The desire of manifestation is then broken up because the universe has been compliant to that. If we look at energy mortality or quantum energy mortality, it's the consistent vibration of energy within a confined space that has no other energies to disrupt it. And that energy is comprised mainly of tachyons. It is also in a tachyon field, which then becomes compliant to those radiant thoughts. So look at it like this. We have an ice cube. I have an ice cube in my hand, which is denser because it's slow-moving matter, slow-moving electrons, and vibration is an ice cube. I put that in a glass of water. When you do that, the ice cube will go down till it reaches equilibrium inside the water. The water is at room temperature. It's liquid. It's the same thing as the ice cube, just different temperatures, which is different vibrations. The ice cube goes into the water, the ice cube swirls around, it can float, it can do whatever it wants, and eventually it will melt or break down because it's trying to find equilibrium with the temperature of the water in the glass, the liquid water. In this study, there is no transfer really of energy. The energy is confined and there is no transfer, so it does not find equilibrium. It just maintains itself. The equilibrium is based within the tachyon field. That's why there's a general tachyon field and a focused tachyon field. The general field keeps consciousness alive and incubated so it can do what it needs to do. It's also the range of thought. It's like the internet or a wire between two telephones in the old days. The tachyon general field provides transmission and reception over a long, vast distance of time and space. So everything from technical remote viewing, psychics, angels, all this stuff is consciousness. It's consciousness and how it relates to the environment. So in the slide that you've probably been watching, there is the slide at the top is neurons of the human brain. And the slide right next to it, the picture right next to it, is our galaxy, is the field of our galaxy, the energy fields around solar systems and planets and radial arms. And it looks exactly like the neurons in the brain. So what we decided is that it's a fractal. All of this is fractal geometry. Because why? Fractal geometry is not only infinite, it interrelates to itself. It's like taking an atom that has its nucleus is proton and neutrons with one electron. It becomes stable. We see the Earth with the moon orbiting around it. It is stable. So what's very small can be very large and reach stability. Once the equilibrium of gravity kicks in and orbital mechanics kick in, therefore it becomes stable. Okay, that's just kind of obvious. The same thing applies in plasma energy, is that once it reaches stability, then it's consistent, the energy is consistent, and it is stable. So we live in a fractal universe, everything from our brains to the outer edges of our galaxy. We live in a plasma energy environment. We can look at that through the sun or the aurora borealis that comes through our atmosphere, the charged ions, that's virtually plasma. And if you look to the other slide, you'll see a below it, you'll see a diagram of what was called neurobrain mapping. The other one is a photo of an entity, a ghost, let's just say. The neurobrain mapping is almost exactly the same as the ghost. So these are not only a representation of consciousness through a diagram. Here's a photo of an actual consciousness which is interrelated, which is identical. One it just has the biological neural network that it has to go through. The other one is free floating, no hemispheres. It is just stated by itself. All right. In the other photo, which you'll see three things. One will be the basic diagram, which we have come up with, of consciousness. And it looks very much like a plasma ball structure that you can get down at Spencer's Gifts. It's almost identical. And there's a story behind the artist that created that and our representation, because we saw, not only saw it visually, this was the best of the diagram that we could come up with to represent all of the energy in the wave packet of consciousness. So here you have the diagram. Below it you have the orb, and then above it you have the central matrix, which is very similar to what we call the thalamus or hypothalamus, where a lot of the center, not only information is being brought out, but also being captured in. So when orbs fly around, they don't bump into a lot of stuff. It's intentional or on purpose, and they can go through walls, ceilings, and solid objects, just like microwaves. It's very similar to a microwave phone. The microwaves can go through solid objects and get reception, transmission, things like that. And this orb consciousness can do the same thing, except it can go through anything at any time. There is no barrier that it cannot go through. So when a psychic says he's talking to a dead spirit, the dead spirit could be in the afterlife or it could be right here in the room. There's a lot of controversy on locality, but the entity, if they're in communication, can tell you where it is. You know, I'm in the room, I'm walking around on the floor, whatever. The entity can tell you that. So here we have the last is the equation for consciousness. The equation for consciousness we came up with because the consciousness by itself is equal to the energy frequencies of it and the energy potential of it. So when you have a consciousness that has an energy potential or is, you might say solid enough, I'm not going to say solid enough, but it's denser in vibration than the surrounding area that it's in, when it goes through the air, it will drag electrons because there's tons and tons of electrons in the air. So when it goes through the air, it drags electrons. And this is what makes it kind of glow under infrared photography and infrared video. It glows white. That's because you're using one source of light, but at the same time, that is scraping electrons. So once you get past those electrons in the outer field, then you can get down more to the nitty-gritty and the anatomy of that orb entity, orb form. So a lot of people see these as flat because they're taking two-dimensional still photos, or they don't have a lens that is properly calibrated to get the spheric shape. So a lot of people throw these out as dust. They have no intelligence, that is thrown out as dust. But if you've been in the field as long as I have, you realize that, yeah, there is a lot of dust out there, a lot of debris. But once your camera is properly calibrated, it cannot see dust. It only sees what's reflected back at it at a set nanometer range into the infrared. You can do the same thing under UV as well. Once you set it up, it only sees what is in that range of energy. UV, infrared. That's it. If dust is not in that range, it's not going to see it. If bugs are not in that range, it's not going to see it. And if you do see them, you'll just cancel them out, go on, keep the experiment running. So we now know that consciousness has 29,000 plus different wave waveforms, wavelengths. Each one is coupled with a packet of hearing, seeing, communication, transmission, understanding, all of that. In many near-death experiences, people who start to leave their body, and they become instantly telepathic. They're listening to the doctors through their consciousness, what they're thinking, what they're talking about, what the people in the hallway are thinking and talking about. They instantly read their minds. Because why? They're receiving for the first time output from other consciousnesses, not shielded or buffered through the brain or the body. Every near-death experience, people go to the other side in the afterlife, and they're all telepathic. They very seldom ever say, oh, that one talked to me. No, there is no reason. Information, the transmission through consciousness into that consistent state of energy of tachyons is instantaneously. They don't have to talk. Their communication is one-to-one. It's as fast as the ideas can come about, as fast as it can travel. That's why angels realize that you have doubt or apprehension or things like that. Then they talk to you about that. So this is all telepathic. It's all telepathic communication, and it reverberates through the entire dimension, throughout our entire universe. No matter how big or thick or dense, thought patterns are transmitted and received throughout the entire universe instantaneously, almost simultaneously. So I could be an Alpha Centauri, and I could be here, and that person could think a thought, and I could receive that thought. It will come to me instantly. And that's like 4.5 light years away, 4.7 light years away. In Alpha Centauri, it could get to me instantaneously. Radio frequency, or even microwave, would take 4.5 light years to reach that destination. Then another 0.5 light years to return. So microwave or radio waves, RF, is just way too slow. Consciousness is its natural environment, is in a tachyon field, generalized tachyon field, and a focused field. The focused field is the identity of a person or a thing. An angel is a thing. He doesn't really have a sex. It can be male or female. It can be it. It's just just a neutral gender. 90% of the makeup of our brain is, you might say, generic. When the brain goes, or the consciousness goes into a body, the hormones kick in and other endorphins kick in and things like that, which determine through our sex, our mental state. Because we're being buffered. Our environment is now being buffered through our bodies. And so sex does play a role in not only decision-making, attitude, viewpoint, discussion. It's just not all testosterone or estrogen. It is a cacophony of biochemicals that sustains the buffering system to slow down reality so that I can interpret it. Consciousness moves at faster than the speed of light. It moves faster than the speed of light. It's in tomorrow as it is in today. It's in yesterday the same as it is in tomorrow. It can go either way. It just depends on what you're focused on. That's why this reality, even in the double slit experiment, is the focusing of the reality. We focus on it, it automatically obeys the way that we think it should transpire. That's why this secret was so important. That's why manifestation still goes on today. The reason why we don't connect those dots is because we're so individualized thinking that there could not be one simple answer. And the answer is the architects of the universe is a fractal. The brain is a fractal. The energy that runs through the brain and the body obeys fractal geometry, fractal architecture. That becomes the simplest, fastest way to do this. Now, we can get down even deeper into the quasi-crystal. Now, quasi-crystal actually transmits frequencies of energy and then Cells divide, DNA is replicated. This whole thing boils down to a small component called the quasi-crystal, and it is the best way that energy is transferred throughout the body. Now, outside of the body, it just goes on to where it reaches the subject. So let's have the name, like in the power of prayer, which is a form of manifestation. I'm going to pray for somebody. I'm going to get their name. I'm going to write it down. The name is the target. My intention is for them to get well. I pray, which is a form of manifestation, positive thinking, that person get well. In all the statistics, the person, whether they know they're being prayed for or not, gets healthier faster than other people with the same condition. And the more people that pray, it amplifies the signal, and they get healthier because why? Their cells, their bodies, the nucleus of the cell get the information and then starts adjusting to heal that body. So this is where a lot of things come in. We are poking it with a pin, consciousness. We're poking consciousness with a pin and the environment that it's in, but we're not getting the full picture because we still don't think that it's that simple or that easy, when it actually is. It is not a complex thing. What is complex is our assessment of the reality that we're in. Whether we have 29,000 different wavelengths in non-competing form in our consciousness is irrelevant. It is how we intend to focus our mind and the direction that we want to go. So if you're having a bad day, have a bad day. If you're having a good day, have a good day. It's how you deal with it. It's how you find this zen of life so that we're not pushed to the extremes of neurotic or fear or panicked or whatever, because people are wanting the extremes. If I'm too nervous or too neurotic or worry too much, I want the extremes where I have no worries, no fear, nothing can hold me back. So we're relentless going back and forth to the extremes of the spectrum, where we need to come inside and be one with our mind. Our body and mind need to be one so they can communicate with each other, reinforce each other, and tell us that we need to be the best that we can. So all of this makes sense. And then you add in the Joker card, which is the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind owns almost 90% of you. We get information through our subconscious mind. We can also avoid things with our subconscious mind. People buy an airplane ticket or a train ticket or whatever, and they suddenly at the last minute don't go on that plane. They turn around and go back. And that plane will take off and then it crashes and they go, I'm glad I didn't get on that plane. Now, a lot of people say this is ego. Ego says the worst things can happen or the best things can happen. Ego is, again, on a spectrum within itself, because it's within your own brain. So it's going back and forth to the spectrum. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Do I run from this? Do I fight this? Do I stay in the middle? What do I do? And many times we go back to our basic mental programming, and that is we don't want to deal with it, or we want to deal with it. Black and white, ones and zeros, flip a switch. And then that's our decision-making process. When actually it should be more than that. We should be more rounded than that. Not so black and white, not so to the extremes, but somewhere in the middle. So we can make wise decisions using our subconscious as well as our conscious mind. The subconscious will creep out in the middle of your dreams and sometimes give you nightmares, or sometimes just give you weird dreams, because it's trying to tell you something that is perceived while you're awake and walking around. It's also active when you're asleep. Subconscious mind is the best programmer, or it is the worst programmer, because sometimes you have to get hypnotized to stop these addictions to the extremes. And hypnosis works in overeating, smoking, other things, and that subconscious mind can be reprogrammed. So it is working with you, as well as the ego is working with you. The id is working with you, and not so extremes to one side or the other. Reaching this middle part is how we understand the entire reality in which we're in. The immensity of the universe, the immensity of the afterlife, and the immensity of the Creator. An EVP proves transmission and reception. Video proves reception. Every step in the process, whether you're using EEG, which is again reception of a transmission, whether you use EEG, a PET scan, MRI, it means very little, because you're not looking for the energy, the plasma energy of consciousness. And that's why we miss the target. And a lot of things that have been developed that people use in the field are not designed for consciousness. They are designed for electricity. And the only way that they work or don't work is if there is electricity in the area. And that's electrons. So every time an entity moves by something that is looking for electricity, it can bump into it and it goes off. Then you ask a question, it'll come back, and if it wants to answer the question or may not, just want to fool with you, it can sit there and make that arc and get that electricity to look like it's in response. You can take a flashlight, undo it, set it down, and it makes the connection either way. Because why? It's electrons. Electrons can be moving around in the air and people think they're entities. It's only if they're intelligent and if they can understand what you're asking and respond in that manner. And then it goes on from there. When you talk to a psychic and the psychic is authentic, that is your guide. When you go into a strange world and you don't know the language and you really don't know the layout of the land, you ask for a guide to show you and communicate with the natives that are there. A qualified psychic can do that. It gets you a little bit further into that world where you can start downloading information, start asking questions, and itemize what it's all about. Many people in the near-death experience actually go to the other side. They actually see colors and force and things that don't even compare to the earth. Why? It's because they don't have the eyes that are blocking out the colors. And why is it so vast and so big? Because it's all a mental state. It's a mental hologram with the energy that's there. We accept it as real because it's vibrating the same reality as consciousness in the death state. So that's reality. Okay, my hand can't pass through this table because why? I'm vibrating at the same speed. The vibration is the same. My hand's vibration is the same. It is a reality. That's what we discuss it as a reality. This is a reality in three-dimensional space. But the conscious mind and the subconscious mind don't see it the same way. Once it leaves the body, it is totally set free from any bias, any ego, any id, any superego that might be out there. It's lost in the translation of leaving the body. But when it comes back into the body and it's learned something, then it maintains itself. In many instances, in many cases, when you dealing with near-death experiencers, they talk about the vividness and the expanse of the area that they're in. And that is a mental illusion. It's only real because they're vibrating at the same frequency as that state. So you do pull your demons with you when you go, and you go to that resonant state. The idea is to get rid of the extremes and get back to the Zen, get back to the middle, where you're a well-rounded individual, taking gains and losses almost equally. and understanding that emotional pathway and how it conducts your thinking, your way of life, your biochemistry, the hormones, the whole attributes of being human. Consciousness has been found, it's been analyzed, and it's been developed. So if you want quantum states of consciousness, we've got it. If you want the energy of consciousness, we've got it. So I don't know what the argument is. I don't know why this is such an important topic that people keep running around the bush saying that they can't find it. And I got plenty of people out there with EEG machines telling me, Dr. Lynch, we're going to find consciousness. We're going to find consciousness. No, you're not. Not with an EEG machine, because you're just recording the stimulus of what the body is feeling. That is just a stimulus translator. That's all you're recording. That's not consciousness. That's in relation to consciousness, not consciousness, not the adaptability. Now, a lot of military industrial complex people say, oh no, we can get into the consciousness, we can reprogram things, we can do that. No, you can't, because the energy that you're doing it with is through the subconscious door, or a neurochemical, which is only temporary. Real hypnosis is forever. It can change a program and last forever. So we can develop our own blind spots, especially in extreme behaviors. Can be hypnotized and go back to a center where it does not have that much effect. Consciousness is not only real, it is the reality that we're in, and the universe and the energy in the tachyon field becomes compliant to it by design. So you're driving in a car and the road is being created in front of you. So you're driving in the car and the road is being created as you drive the road down the road. It's being created because your mind is looking and building the next mile of that road every second of every day. And so is everybody else. We have a mutual understanding, a mutual agreement on what cars do, what roads look like, what the sky does, how the earth lays itself out, what is snow, what is water, what is air. We all have a mutual agreement. It's just when we have these addictive behaviors we cannot stop, it all starts to shift. We all start to shift. So that shifts the climate, that shifts the atmosphere, that shifts the water, that shifts education, that shifts the way we program our society, the way we drive down the road, because we are constantly, uniformly building it with the gears of the universe, the gears of reality. So we are building our reality consistently by our consciousness, because the universe becomes compliant. Everything starts out as a thought or an idea and then becomes into a form of reality. All artists and architects that sit and draw, they're saying, oh, that'd be a good app. That'd be a good little thing, widget. Let's go out and build it. But it all comes from an idea which then is motivated and pushed into a reality that we have and that we can use. All of my equipment came for me drawing and writing and taking notes in a book, and I put that book, and I went back to that book several years later, and there's all my equipment right there. I had drawn it up, I had siphoned it out, and I started to build it. Subconsciously, I kind of knew where I was going, but I just didn't create it or bring it into life, into this reality, because it just took time. It took time to get the parts, took time to cut it up and make a prototype and throw the prototype out and build another one. So it takes time over and over until the system becomes efficient enough to get the evidence that you're after. If you're using products that are already in the market where everyone can get it, we should be all getting the exact same results, but they're not designed to look for consciousness. Nothing is really designed to look for consciousness. But if you do get fairies, an orb, a full-bodied apparition, a mist, you're lucky. Out of the 99% of all ghost photos, 1% are full-bodied apparitions. Just 1%. But that's what everyone declares as being a ghost, a full-bodied apparition. It's up to that entity whether they want to have a full-bodied apparition or not. It's not up to us. So your choice of ideas of what consciousness is a full-bodied apparition, then you're narrowing it down to only 1% of the data and the evidence that is out there. You just can't throw everything else out and then say, I only believe if I have a body of Bigfoot. I'll only believe if I have a full-bodied apparitions. I'll only believe until I get an EVP. That's crazy. That blows my mind, because then what are you doing? Out of all the evidence that you're ever going to get, you're only going to believe 1% of it, when 99% of it was staring you in the face from day one? Day one? That's insane. All of this is observational science. All sciences start not as a pseudoscience, not as a belief system, not as a cult. It starts out as observational science. The first line in the scientific method is to realize you have a problem. And if you have a problem that you can't find consciousness, well, then you must be using the wrong equipment, the wrong direction, and the wrong philosophy. That's why it's all so befuddling. The information befuddles the intellectual brain. It doesn't befuddle anybody. Everyone's just thrown out the evidence or never went ghost hunting. So if you're some divinity or philosophical PhD sitting around going, well, you know, one of these days we're going to find consciousness. Well, I sit here and type up my next book that I've stolen from everybody else so I can keep my tenure. You've already lost the game. You're not in the game to begin with. You don't know the direction to follow. So this whole thing, it becomes irrelevant, because the people who have some idea of spirituality or intelligence or whatever aren't ghost hunting, and the ones that are ghost hunting are getting the evidence, but they're throwing out 99% of it for that 1% that they actually believe in. And then all their equipment, they could have 10 or 15 different items, are not designed to look for consciousness. It is only designed to look for electricity. So, well, what are you going to do tonight? Go bowling? What do you think the skeptics and atheists always seem like they're going to win? Because no one is looking at everything all the time. They have their own biases, their own egos, their own eccentricities, which delude the evidence or throw it out. Does that make any sense? Are you going to ever win the argument? Are you ever going to win the argument that consciousness exists? No. We found it. It's been found. It's been analyzed. It's been quantifiably stated. The energy that moves around the brain has been, but we're not talking the brain or the body. We're talking about energy immortality. Quantum energy immortality in a wave packet of energy, which is you. Your consciousness. Your being. What you stand for. The way you look at the world is in a plasma energy locked inside your body. And when you die, it will leave. Because your body is not hot enough to maintain it. The body breaks down, the energy leaves. That is what this is all about. You're waiting until the energy leaves the body before you can make an accurate assumption, an assessment of the afterlife when there's no need. We can do it today, 21st century style. There's no need to guess. It's all been done. The situation now is to take the atheist, skeptic, and the ivory tower fuddy-duddies and say, this is it. This is the new science. This is the revolutionary new science that everyone's been waiting for. And you're not even going to look at it because why? Well, you're going to throw it out. You're just going to throw it out. You're just going to throw it out because you don't believe it or understand it. Isn't that crazy? What's crazy? What's really crazy? Let's say if everyone drove a Ferrari, they wouldn't know what a Volkswagen was. If everyone drove a Volkswagen, they'd never know what a Ferrari was. But that doesn't mean you have to eliminate it from the way you're thinking. There's always improvements. There's always different directions. But you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. It's a big picture. And you're looking at a pinprick of one little thing. Point of light in a vast universe that you're just throwing out because it does not fit your paradigm. It doesn't fit what you think is evidence. And you're not going to get famous if you don't get that full-bodied apparition. It's bogus, man. Do your due diligence. Go over your evidence again and again till where it is fine-tuned and ready for presentation all the time. Take the evidence and put it in front of someone. If it has convinced you, it will be undeniable. Go through the scientific method. Develop the equipment that you need. Become the genius. Go into that direction and thrive if you really want to solve this. If not, hey, you can always put a podcast out, publish a magazine, do whatever, get all the notoriety and fame you want. But I can tell you, fame is not evidence. Facts are evidence. Okay, this has been the show for tonight. I want to tell you, if you've got a problem with consciousness, that's your problem. I don't have a problem with consciousness. I understand. I'm learning, at least I'm understanding it. I don't want to hear any more about people who've got tenure in some university somewhere and claiming that there's no hand on consciousness. There's no grip on consciousness. That's BS. Listen, if Russell Targ can get a grip on consciousness, I think a lot of us can. It's not beyond the realm of anyone. It's just you have to go out there and do it. Find it. Analyze it. So many people have been in the field to find Bigfoot and have died in the process. But what they found, the evidence they found, verified their suspicions that this is an authentic creature. Just because it came to Earth 64,000 years ago from another planet, brought to Earth by the Pleiades, the Pleiadians, when it's 7.4 light years away in the Pleiades star system, their planet. And they bring them to Earth as well as they take them to other places throughout the galaxy. Bigfoot is an alien. But a lot of us are. A lot of us are hybrids. I mean, the human race is. That's why our consciousness is so complex. The consciousness required for my DNA is slightly different for years. But it's still consciousness. And that's what we need to be addressing and approaching. Hey, this has been Off the Cuff with Dr. Lynch. I'm sorry I got a little wordy there. But I want everyone to know there is no problem finding consciousness or the field that it's in. The idea is to understand it. That's the situation. Understanding the consciousness that we have. Tune in next time. This has been Off the Cuff, and I've been your host, Dr. Michael Lynch. And again, have a great tomorrow, and thank you for watching.